Okay, hello. We are about to start the next session. So in this session, we have two speakers on stage coming from Ernst & Young. We'll talk about real-world use cases for accelerating AI and data-centric transformation. Please welcome Luke Pritchard and Hugh Burgin.
Great. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. So we have, bad start to the clicker here. Let me click over here. So we have a focus on the agenda of really some real-world examples of leveraging Databricks for AI, machine learning, and data solutions that are creating significant business value and unlocking new opportunities. So we have two very different ones we chose from. These are actually live demos that are available at our booth. So if you'd like to go see an actual demo of it, you can go to the booth after this and they can explain it to you and actually show it to you live. One of the examples we selected is around inventory optimization and demand forecasting, which is a brick builder solution that we also offer. And that solution, just to give you a preview of it, is a machine learning operations solution at scale that generated over $100 million of value for our client. And so it's a fun example of a large data problem. The second example is very different. So it's actually about geospatial data, satellite image data, and actually making that data searchable through natural language with large language models. And so it's a pretty innovative example, and I think we also have a live demo of that we can show you at the booth as well. So two very different examples with lots of different industries that they can be applied to, and we'll walk you through that. Before we get into the examples, just want to talk about business value. You know, the focus is how do you leverage a technology to unlock business value? And so the World Economic Forum estimates that $3 trillion in value can be generated through unlocking data and connecting data across an organization. So within an organization or across and outside of that organization. And so all of the things you've seen in the keynotes and the other breakout sessions from Databricks are about connecting data, having trusted data. And so we think there's a real opportunity here for the enterprises that are in attendance. So what does it mean to generate value from data? And we think of it in two ways. One way is the decision value of the data. So how can I make a business decision and automate that or get insights that matter to inform my decisions? So this could be optimizing inventory. So how do I use machine learning to estimate or target how much inventory I should have, how many days of supply I should have, and leverage data to drive that decision or automate that decision? It could be a marketing example. How do I use propensity modeling to predict which products a customer is likely to buy? So that automating of decisions, leveraging data, and connecting data across the enterprise is a huge opportunity. The other is the economic value of data. So actually generating external revenue from your data. And there's a lot of good examples of that. It's actually very easy to do in terms of finding a buyer for the data. There's marketplaces, there's lots of companies interested in buying data. The hard part is having good data. And so how do you have data people can trust, that's well governed, that's predictable, a data product that a company who buys it can rely upon as being consistent? If they're gonna make decisions using your data, they need it to be consistent and trustworthy. And so there's a lot of marketplace opportunity there. I've worked with an agriculture company as an example who is able to identify people interested in global commodity trading data to help them inform decisions around investments that they're making in commodities markets. And so it's nothing to do with customer data, nothing to do with personal data, but by having access to global trade information, a lot of people are interested in that. And if you can generate a well-governed, tangible product, there's a lot of opportunity. Airlines are another example, or travel and transportation companies. Their frequent flyer programs, I don't know if you've read about this, but during COVID, their market value for the airline business went down significantly. They were negative revenue from a actual airline travel transportation business. However, their frequent flyer data was valued at $4 billion. And so, the ability to sell that data, the customer data, the ability to actually sell points and sell miles, actually generated more value than the rest of the entire travel business. And so, these are real world examples and very different ways of monetizing data. So if data is valuable, then what are we doing about it? So we did a survey of executives, CEOs, presidents of companies, several hundred executives, and more than half of them said data and analytics is not just a top priority, not just a top 10 priority, the number one priority in our business. So how we are going to transform our business, data and analytics is number one for more than half of the companies. It was top 5 for all of the companies, but it was number one for more than half. But that same survey, that same executive pool also said 2/3 of our transformation projects, 2/3 of us have seen transformations not go well. They're not working, they're not successful. We have a great idea, 2 years later, we haven't gotten any value from it. And so the opportunity is there, they see the opportunity, they're investing in it, but they're not always seeing results. And so we want to talk about some of the challenges that companies have to overcome and how we think Databricks and what we're doing in the market with Databricks, with our clients, are overcoming those challenges. So three kind of big hurdles to go over here are things that we often see. And I often get asked to come in and look at some of these programs where they say, look, we've got $1 billion investment in an ERP program. We're not getting it done. Can you come look at it and tell us and figure out why it's not working? And so there's 3 things we're seeing. One is it's really difficult to connect to the data. The marketing team has their data, the finance team has their data. There might be 23 different ERP systems globally. How do we access that data? You can access parts of it, but actually having a trusted, connected fabric of that data across the enterprise is really not easy. The second thing is it's too slow, it's too complex, it's not scalable enough. And so the Lakehouse platform, the energy around that, the innovation around that is enabling us to connect the data much more easily and have the scalability for large enterprises to be able to solve these problems. The third one is super important, and sometimes it's a byproduct of the first two. The projects take too long, and therefore we forgot why we're doing the project. So a key thing to remember, and the key thing we see is, why are you doing the project? Why are you doing this transformation? What's the business reason why you're doing it? And staying connected to that, not just in the beginning, but all the way throughout the program. Because this example of the ERP implementation, it was $1 billion investment over several years. And I went to the executives and I said, well, why are you making $1 billion investment? And they couldn't answer the question. Well, we need it. Our systems are old and we need better systems. Well, yeah, but you could probably hang on to them for a few more years. I mean, you don't really have to do it. So why are you doing it? And so focusing on that business outcome, that business case, and reminding people that along the way, because they will need to make decisions. They'll need to make trade-offs. Do I do this or do I do that? And if you don't have that alignment to the business outcome that you're driving towards, you'll lose track of it. And unfortunately, we've seen it more often than we've not seen that as a challenge. So Databricks is key to unlocking these challenges. So as we think about these challenges, we think about our focus on business outcomes, business alignment, our focus on our relationships with CFOs, with heads of supply chain, with heads of manufacturing, operations, and Databricks' technology capabilities. We believe that that's a a way to overcome these challenges. And Luke, do you want to talk about what you're seeing?
Yep, and thank you, Hugh. Yeah, so we're seeing Databricks as really a center of a lot of this activity, bringing it all together, integration, because it is complex. There's, as Hugh laid out the landscape, there is a lot of different data, but there's also different ways to integrate different systems, different processes that you also have to take into account. And so how we see Databricks, what do we mean? Why is it in the center of everything? There's really 3 value triggers we see as EY when it comes to a transformation program. There's technology, everybody talks about that. In technology at speed, everybody talks about that. That's the cornerstone, is the tech. Innovation's talked about quite a bit, but the third part that's really key that drives the other is the humans at center. So what's the user experience? And Databricks does a really good job bringing that user experience to developers, data engineers, data scientists, but then on top of it, they're able to also bring that experience in the derivatives that they're building. So it creates a richer experience for the personas that are going along on this transformation journey. They may not be a Databricks notebook user, but they're using an app that's benefiting from the algorithms and the data that was combined with Databricks. When we look at that innovation, the huge partner ecosystem of Databricks, given they're not even public, they have a great partner ecosystem, ISVs, consulting partners. It's very rich, and I haven't seen anything in my career like this. And so you have different experts in different areas, functional domains, technology, and Databricks does a good job bringing that piece of it together, as well as the tech, and then supporting all these different personas. And what's the end outcome? What are our clients trying to do? What's the value? So we do not forget what the value is, right? They're trying to change the market. They're trying to differentiate from their competitors. They're trying to stay afloat, maybe not go out of business, costs going through the roof. And it could be decreasing risk. So one client I'm working with is vegetation around their assets, around power lines, and there's a lot of risk. If those catch on fire, and they're at fault, they're going to have regulatory issues, huge fines, and it'll cut into their profits or even solvency as a firm. So as we look at it, we do see Databricks key to every transformation journey because given the importance of data and analytics. So we're going to go through 2 real-world examples. We provided a little context here. Hugh's going to run through the demand forecasting and inventory optimization. We're doing this at a number of clients. It's also in our booth, as Hugh mentioned. And then I'm going to run through a generative AI use case with satellite data, which it's an emerging use case that we're really excited about that we're doing at several different clients. Hugh?
Thank you, Luke. So this demand forecasting and inventory optimization example is going to tie back to those 3 challenges, which are connecting data across the enterprise, scalability, and alignment to business outcomes. And so the situation with this client is they have several $1 billion of working capital expenditure every month. They have to, invest in the inventory in the stores so that they have products to sell, and it's billions of dollars. They have 10,000 stores. They have legacy systems. They have new systems. They're constantly changing. It's not one situation. They have technology challenges in that forecasts take 12 hours to complete. Lots of scale, 250,000 store SKU combinations. And so the question that was posed is, historically, when we reduce inventory, we negatively impact the customer experience. Out of stocks go up, or inventory goes down, or inventory goes up and working capital goes up and service levels improve. And we want to be able to reduce working capital, but not affect the customer experience, not affect our revenue. And so can we use machine learning at scale to solve that problem? And how do we optimize that balance between working capital and customer experience? And so the technical approach was a few things. One is it's connecting data. So for the first time, we were able to bring in customer level data around their orders and their likely future orders, combine that with inventory data, operations data, supply chain data, finance data into one platform using Azure services, ADLS and Azure Data Factory and Azure Databricks. And then how can we tap into that data at scale, running 250,000 machine learning models every few days, every day, every week, in order to generate that business outcome. So we connected data. We had to scale the machine learning operations procedures. And then we talked earlier about decision value of data. So the decision value was actually building an application to allow them to simulate the effect of inventory changes before they actually implemented them. So what we were able to use is build an application that allows them to say, hey, I'm going to evaluate if I were to reduce inventory on hand or days of inventory by 2 days, what would the impact on my service levels be? What would the impact on my general ledger be? And they can actually test those decisions before they put them into practice. And so they could test it and say, look, let's try to reduce it by $100 million and see that there's going to be no impact on the customer experience. So why don't we try to reduce it by $200 million and see if what that impact is? And so, the simulation capabilities there were a key feature that allowed the executive team for the supply chain operations to have a lot more confidence in the business decisions they were making. And so what were the outcomes? Technically, the outcomes were that a process that took 12 hours now takes about 90 minutes, less than 90 minutes, and we also are incorporating customer data. So the complexity of the models, the number of machine learning models increased, but the time it took to process it went down by 90% with Databricks. The second is from a business value perspective. So over $100 million of working capital savings with no impact to the customer experience. So the service levels, the out of inventory, the out of stock did not change relative to the control group stores, but the working capital inventory reduced by over $100 million. At one point, it was over $200 million. So we are excited about this solution. It is a brick builder solution now, the demand forecasting solution as an accelerator. So we have it packaged up as a product that we can accelerate for our clients, integrated into their platforms. Okay, so let's switch gears and we will talk about a different use case. And we're excited about this one. It is generative AI for satellite data. And we think this is going to unlock business questions people didn't know they could ask. So when you start thinking about this, and we'll actually, if you have a great question, if you think this use case could answer a good question, we'll have a little competition and we can give out some prizes at the booth and so forth. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on what questions could this type of use case answer for you or for your business or anywhere in the world. All right, Luke.
Thanks, Hugh, again. This is one I'm pretty excited about. I started my career in the geospatial industry and processing aerial, satellite, remote sensing data. Early in my career, putting up in the cloud and then distributing out different products across different industries. And that was 20 years ago. And the technology, it was hard. You had to build your own data center. You had to tweak GPUs. There wasn't really Google at that point. You had to actually look at library books. So for a lot of the math and things of that nature. Fast forward, the tech's gone a lot better. Databricks, as it relates in terms of processing data and automating the data, running algorithms, there's several things you can do from a tech side. I think the bigger thing is folks really haven't thought about business questions around satellite data. It's been traditionally a GIS, remote sensing, specialized tools type environment. But what we're seeing with satellite data is there is a lot of questions that can be answered. And we'll go into a little bit more detail around that. But if we go to Jefferson County in Idaho, how much farmland do they have? What's the percentage of it that's corn? What's the historical yield? What was the rain, or what does the water look like compared to the previous year? Is that going to have an impact to their upcoming yield in the forecast? Well, if we tweak scenario modeling for the next 5 years, what's the tweak going to be around that? What's the financial impact based on some of my other data? I had actually a client I talked to earlier today, and they're looking to measure snowmelt up in Alaska around what they call ice dams that form in the rivers as the melt is coming down, and they have little mini icebergs in the rivers that come down. What is going to be the impact to the shoreline because of that? What's going to be the impact to the economy around that? So there's a number of questions that are coming around as it relates. And I think the one thing is not just about the satellite data, it's also unifying enterprises' data, their financial data, their SAP data, their asset data, their transactional data. In the utility, what does that look like with their metering system, their compliance division around managing vegetation? So there's a lot of different questions. We do see financial services having a lot in this space. We're also seeing a lot as it relates to logistics, anything with location, things with time, agricultural, a big area as well, and energy for sure, around our different client sets. And we're pretty excited. So we'll go into a little bit more detail here. So why hasn't this really happened through the years? I mean, the technology has actually been around to do this for a long time. The data's been there. They've been collecting it through different ways. So if you think about satellite data, if you're not familiar with it, satellite data, they've had consistent collection for at least 40 years. There was different programs that came through commercially in the 2000s. There were some vendors that came in. And a lot of those systems are task-based. There is some that do take pictures on a regular refresh. Sentinel-2 that has a refresh of every 5 days. It takes a picture of the same place on Earth, and it covers the whole globe. But if you look at the commercial vendors, it's all task-based. And why that matters is there's been a huge focus on image resolution, but not the scientific data behind it. So if you collect satellite imagery, you also have infrared in there where you can read whether it's a concrete surface, vegetation, so you can do studies around pervious, impervious. You got a blue band in there to measure water around that, and many other pieces of it. And so there's a lot of really rich data. Looking at the data doesn't actually really matter that much. There is a lot more you can do with satellite data if you're running through algorithms and processing from that side of things and then mixing it with other data. The other thing that comes up around this is accessibility and discoverability. And I think we talked a little bit earlier with personas with Databricks. That certainly makes it easier to enterprise. You don't have to go out and buy a specialized tool around that. The specialized tool is what everybody has been using through the years. Takes a lot of training, certification, masters to understand what is this math function in this software GUI. What does that do when I change my data, I have all these layers. But if you're a business user and you use Excel or Power BI, or something very simple, you're not going to go in and use one of those tools. Plus, they're expensive. And this gets into our transformation triggers as we think about it. That getting the user experience right is very important. Having the business questions as the center of this is very important. And not until recent times have we been able to have the technology brought together to be able to pull this together. And this is where we see Databricks doing a very good job of bringing these different things to go. And I'll go through the solution here, but these are the core components of what we do with our clients. I mean, there's other systems they have. They might have SAP data in there. They may have different pieces, from an AMI system sitting in Teradata. But as you look at it, and as you work through these systems, and we'll run through our demo here of the data flow, it's very interesting, and Databricks is really that glue. It's, we're using the cloud of Microsoft, but that's not the glue. The data's the key thing on top of this. Okay, so as you look at this demo that we have in our booth, If you look at the screen, it looks very simple. It looks just like any conversational AI interface that's out there, and it is. We just built a quick low-code, no-code platform. It is designed for business users to just go in and ask questions around data. In our particular demo that we're focusing on, it's looking at asking different questions around farmland in Idaho, and that's the piece. And they can show you in the booth that the people that develop it, they're all down there. They can get into all the nitty-gritty. But what does the data flow look like that we took? So we took Planetary Computer that Microsoft has, which has Sentinel-2 data in there. It's not the highest resolution data, but it comes with a bunch of bands. So it has water data in there. It has the infrared band in there. So there's a bunch of different pieces of data you can run your algorithms through. So we brought that down, and we also took in USDA farm data, and then we also had some client data as well, financial data to go into that. As part of that, bringing that into Delta Lake format, bringing those things together, we had to do a number of things with the satellite images to be able to break down the bands. So that's where you saw GDAL in there. How do you make a GDAL package distributed across your nodes and across your clusters? What you don't want to do in processing satellite imagery is upscale. You want to be using GPUs. You want to be using, and you want to do distributing compute around that. And so that's one thing that, earlier in my career, is very difficult to do. And we would have servers, GPUs, and galore, and try to string all that stuff together. And we'd have support nightmares galore around that. And so from there, we would process that data, and then we'd read that through our algorithms. But then getting that data prepped into a data lakehouse from the Databricks side, and then on the making a GUI that can essentially allow normal people to ask questions around this data. So the thing we're really excited about is we're working with our clients. They're coming up with new questions, new ways. And so we're even looking at, hey, how can we get better questions when we go help our clients around this? And we do think there's a lot of value across industries around this. This data really has not been used to the full extent. You see use cases, but it really just has not gone into the enterprise. And we're pretty excited about it, and we think there'll be some new learnings here, making things better, or work better across their businesses from that side.
Great. So, in all seriousness, we would love to get ideas on questions you could ask, and get your input on that. And we do have prizes at the booth. We'd love to share with you if you're interested. So those are the two solutions we wanted to show and walk you through. There are a few other solutions available at the booth. So my role is I'm the EY Global Databricks Alliance lead and lead our Databricks consulting practice in the Americas. Luke is our data modernization lead for our practice. And would love to answer questions you have, talk to you, get your feedback on this. We'll be down at the booth this afternoon, so would love to talk to you more. We also have some other solutions that are either brick builder solutions or going to be brick builder solutions over the summer. A couple of them focus on financial services, so Insurance Insights with Guidewire. Data Fusion is a lakehouse solution for financial services to scale and connect and integrate financial data. Our threat and vulnerability platform, I'd love your feedback on the term whack-a-mole as our nickname for it, but it's a cybersecurity solution around managing threats with the lakehouse, and we leverage Databricks for that. Databricks is our engine for that solution. We have a demo for that as well. And then I think that when you look at natural language search of satellite data, I think responsible AI comes up as a natural follow-up conversation there around how do we make sure we're handling these engines in a responsible way. And so we've got some solutions around explaining models and creating, leveraging DALL-E and Databricks for capturing explanations of what's happening in machine learning models so you can provide governance over that, and more broadly around responsible AI. So would love to talk to you about any of those if you're interested. Okay, so if there's any questions, we'd welcome that. Otherwise, Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
I was curious on the first application. Why is it that you needed 250,000 forecasts and multiple machine learning algorithms versus something smaller?
Yeah, the reason for that was the accuracy of the forecast is unique to every combination of retail store and product in that store. And so what we found is a product at the same retail store, that same product in urban Los Angeles would have a different demand for it versus a location in the mountains of Colorado. The demographics of customers, the weather patterns actually affect the demand for these products, and so we wanted to generate that level of accuracy. We needed to be able to go down to that level. So if you think of it as being 10,000 stores, hundreds of products, that's how you get to that number.
Awesome, thanks.
Yep.
Questions?
Okay.
I have a question for you, Hugh. So you mentioned there you save $100 million working capital, right, in that use case, by showing the customer some simulated data. So basically simulation difference, hey, this is what you can bring down without impacting the business. How do you convince them just by showing them simulations?
Yeah, how do we convince them that they can actually generate that savings?
Right.
Yeah. It's a good question. So it was a multi-phased approach. So it started as a pilot. So we did it started as a proof of concept using historical data. So we did a proof of concept, analyzing a control group and a test group and seeing what the impact was with blinded data. So we weren't told, we weren't told actual details about any of the products. We just had to test it in a blind control study. And it was a multi-vendor, it was 6 vendors competing for that, and we were selected as the solution to go implement. Then we did a proof of concept in 200 stores and had a holdout sample of 200 stores to compare it against, measured that difference. That was successful, and then we rolled it out to all 9,000 or 10,000 stores from there.
Totally makes sense. So
Yeah.
stage rollout, right? So that's
There were a lot of
sense.
milestones along the way.
Yeah, we do the same thing when we roll out software at Databricks. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Cool. More questions? Maybe I can have another question for Luke. So I actually have a friend working on GIS data. He's actually recently published a paper in Science investigating the freshwater lake shrinkage by looking at past 50 years of freshwater satellite imagery data. One of his complaints about is he spent 80% of the time working with this GIS software, right?
Yep.
Writing a lot of code to actually clean up the data. So basically all the vendor issues that you mentioned.
Yep.
I wonder, in one of your slides, you mentioned you just use Mosaic to extract the relevant field from the imagery. How is that done? Actually,
Yeah, there's still some work you have to do, right? So you've got to do. I'll give you an example for a county border, right? So when you get images from a satellite, there's overlap. So that's problem number one, meaning you're trying to do a study of this particular area. Well, when you download the satellite images, they are all overlapping each other. So how do you clip that out so you're not getting redundancy in your data?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably one of the issues he had. The other issue that you have is counting, things aren't perfect squares. So how do you, clip it, right?
Yeah, a lot of the data clean up like this.
Yep. And then the other side is the bands, because you got to strip the band data. You also have to, for clouds, you got to detect if there's clouds. Can you strip the clouds out? And the clouds is still kind of a challenge. I mean, I'm hoping people, as Databricks has done some things in the geospatial side to make it easier. I think as people do more algorithms with Databricks, I think these things will get easier and easier. I think the bigger issue is the GIS systems, they're closed. And so they don't have the ecosystem, they don't have the open source piece of it. And that's probably been one of the biggest limitations.
Yeah, he cannot really run it on Databricks, for
Oh,
example.
sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah, so basically my friend complains like he cannot really run it on Databricks, like run on Spark and do the processing.
Yeah, so we worked with some folks at Databricks that it turned out uncannily they were working on something similar. And so they're making GDAL a lot easier to work with because GDAL is kind of one of the key things for a lot of that work there.
That's really cool. I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, I can tell you who it is.
Sounds good. We can talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, more questions? More? Okay.
All right. I did just want to say thank you for coming, and thank you to our people we work with every day at Databricks, Brian, Nikhil, Sabina, Corey. So thank you to them as well, and I appreciate you all taking the time. I would love to talk to you more at the booth if there's an opportunity.
Okay, let's thank our speakers again.
Thank you.
Thank you.